video will demonstrate a mobility exercise of active assisted range of motion for wrist flexion due to decreased range of motion. Our patient has only 50 degrees of wrist flexion due to disuse and atrophy of the flexor carpi radialis, ulnaris, and digitorum profundus due to being in a cast for 6 weeks. The patient will be seated with the right hand on the table. If you could please put your right hand on the table, make sure that it is supinated. Make sure your palm is facing up. I will have the patient go to their end range, so if you could flex as much as you can. I will then facilitate the rest of the range of motion until mild discomfort, holding for 10 seconds, doing 3 sets. I can do tactile cueing by stabilizing her forearm to make sure that the wrist does not come off the table. This exercise dose was selected in order to increase the range of motion when mobility is limited due to atrophy, muscle atrophy. You can increase the intensity of this exercise by holding for a longer period of time or going until a little bit more discomfort. This video will demonstrate a strength and endurance exercise for the wrist flexor muscles. So this patient has limited wrist flexion due to atrophy, flexor carpi ulnaris, flexor carpi radialis, and flexor digitorum profundus. So for this exercise, the patient will sit next to the table as shown. They will place their forearm on the table. So you can put your arm on the table. Their wrist will be hanging off the table with their arms supinated. So can you put your wrist off the table, turn your wrist up to the ceiling. They will then grasp a weight that will be heavy enough to reach their 10 rep max, and they will flex their wrist towards them. So can you bend your wrist towards your body? They will do 3 sets of 10 to increase hypertrophy with a 30-second rest in between each set to facilitate fatigue recovery. To increase the intensity, they can switch out the weights to heavier weight so they can again achieve their 10 rep max. And for tactile cues, you can just guide the wrist through the correct motion.
So this video will demonstrate functional performance to improve wrist flexion. Our patient currently has limited wrist flexion due to atrophy of the flexor carpi radialis, ulnaris, and flexor digitorum profundus from being immobilized in a cast for 6 weeks. So what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you sit in your chair with your legs hanging off and make sure your feet aren't touching the floor. And I'm going to have your hands in a pronated position, so just place your palms down on the chair. And what you're going to do is you're going to push through your extended wrists and your arms and hands and lift your bottom off the chair, just like this. Okay? So what I'm going to have you do is do 2 sets of 15 reps, and you're going to hold for 1 second at the top, and that's to make sure you reach your full range of motion. This is going to increase the endurance of your wrist flexors, and we're also doing it at an intensity of just your body weight against gravity. We can increase intensity by doing more repetitions, and I'm going to use cueing such as keeping your head up, lift straight up, and keep your back straight when you go up.
This video will demonstrate a return to activity exercise of the throwing and follow-through of a ball. The patient has limited wrist radial and ulnar deviation of the radial and ulnar flexors and extensors. So to perform this exercise, the patient will start in a tall kneeling position, like so. The patient will then bring 1 foot in front of them, making sure that their knees flex at 90. So can you bring your foot in front of you? Good. The patient will then horizontally abduct and externally rotate the shoulder while the elbow is flexed at 90 and the wrist is radially deviated. So breathe, can you bring your arm up and back while rotating your trunk and having your hand behind your head? Good. I, the therapist, will toss a ball to the patient. The patient will grasp the ball and follow through to the contralateral side while making sure that their wrist is ulnarly deviated. So breathe, can you follow through to your opposite side? Good. The patient will perform 2 sets of 15 reps with a 1-pound ball, which can be exchanged for a heavier weight to increase intensity. This exercise and dose were selected in order to increase endurance of these muscles so she can return to throwing activities. I can give the patient visual cues by demonstrating the correct arm position in addition to the correct lower extremity position.